皆様お待たせをいたしました。それではセッションを再開いたします。本日最後のセッションは Google Mapplets Mashup of Mashups と題しまして Google のアダム・シュックより講演させていただきます。
Adam Schuck from the Google will be presenting on Google Mapplets.
Konnichiwa.
Good afternoon.
Today I'm going to be talking about a new feature on Google Maps called Google Mapplets. And I'm very excited to be here. My name is Adam Schuck. I'm from the Sydney, Australia office. And I've come to Japan to try and spread the word and get people excited and developing Mapplets. So one thing I'd like to do before I begin my presentation, everyone here, I think you've had a very long day. You're all very tired. So if you've got a laptop, I'd like you to put it down on the chair next to you, and we're going to stand up. So could everyone please stand up? Okay? Stretch. Okay, and lean to your left. Good. Lean to your right, and sit down. I want everyone to be excited as much as I am about Google Mapplets. So let me introduce the problem behind Google Mapplets. So today, if you want to find a hotel, you visit a hotel booking site. And then, if you want to know what is nearby, you would visit Google Maps, and you would find nearby attractions and get driving directions on Google Maps. And these are two different sites, and not everybody knows about the hotel booking site. Similarly, if you want to find a house, you might go to a real estate website, such as housingmaps.com, and then perhaps you'd like to know, is the house in a safe neighborhood? So you would visit a site such as chicagocrime.org, and this way you can look up, are there crimes nearby? Has anyone been murdered in the house in which I'm about to move into? And perhaps you want to send your children to a good school. So you go to yet another website such as greatschools.net, and you can look up schools in the nearby area. Now, currently, not everybody knows about these websites. They're really good, but they're all on different web pages. So what we're trying to do is solve the problem of the gap between users and content. So some of the top sites that use the Google Maps API, we have Panoramio, we have Trulia, we have Yelp, and we have Great Schools. And if you notice from these statistics, the usage of these websites is in the thousands. Now, Google Maps is a very popular website, and we have millions, an orders of magnitude more users than these small websites. And people on these websites, they want to find hotels, restaurants, bars, schools, real estate. They want to find photos, they want to read reviews, they want to look up any kind of information that has geographic content related with it. So what we want to do is bridge these two things together. So this is very exciting for me because Google Mapplets is the solution, and this was just announced yesterday. So you're all very new, and this is the first talk in Japan about Mapplets. So Google Mapplets allow you to bring your mashups to Google Maps users. And right now, you can type into your browser maps.google.co.jp/preview, and you can see a developer preview of Google Maps that supports Mapplets. So I'm going to give you a demonstration of what Mapplets actually are. So There we go. So maps.google.co.jp/preview. And you'll notice that you have a panel that doesn't appear on the normal Google Maps experience for Mapplets. And what we have on Mapplets is we can display these various Maps API sites on Google Maps. And I'm going to show you some examples of this. So I click on this button, Browse Content, and this allows me to view a list of Mapplets that have been made by some people working for Google and some people who, in fact, do not work for Google, developers such as yourself. So from this gallery, I'm going to add a hotel search. And there we go. So a third party, people who do not work for Google, Booking.com, they have created a hotel reservations maplet. And so one can look in the directory for existing Mapplets, and I can add this to my Mapplets panel in Google Maps. So let me add it. Now, as I'm adding it, it tells me that this has not been made by someone working for Google. So this is how users know that it's written by a third party. And so they must be careful with their data, because if they type something into a box, they're giving it to the Maplet. So I add this Maplet, and I go back to Google Maps. And we see that the Maplet search hotels appears in my list. So it's loading, and here we go. So forgive me, I do not speak Nihongo, so I'm going to search in English, Tokyo, and I'm going to search next month for a hotel. Okay, I seem to need to search elsewhere. This is the danger of demonstrating something not written by someone working for Google. There we go, hotels. Okay, so now you see on the map hotels overlaid onto the map. And let's look at one of these hotels. So I open this marker, and you'll notice this content inside the marker is actually provided by Booking.com. So this enables you to put your information on our website. And so perhaps now that I've found this hotel and I'm going to stay there, maybe I want to find some food. So what I do is I search for nearby food. And now I've got the location. And perhaps now that I've found this restaurant, I want to share it with my friends. So I save it to my maps, and I add it to the My Map called Tokyo Tonight. And okay. So, and now I can share this information with my friends. So this is the new way of solving the first problem I mentioned of hotel, restaurant, two different websites. So now we bring it all together. Another example I would like to do is the one I mentioned earlier of searching for a house and seeing if it is a safe neighborhood, seeing if there are good schools nearby. So, Okay, so for an example, so currently some of the Mapplets we have are to do with the city of Chicago in America. And so until the people in this room make Mapplets that deal with Japan and Tokyo, I'm going to give an example of a Chicago use of Mapplets. But I encourage you all to write Mapplets and make local content. So firstly, I need to look for a house. So I add the Google Real Estate Maplet. Okay. I also want to look at how close it is to the train line. So I add the Chicago Transit Maplet. And I also want to see how much crime there is in the area where I want to buy my house. So I add Chicago crime. Okay, now that I have all of these Mapplets, I'm going to go back to Google Maps. And we're now in Chicago. And let's open the Mapplets tab. So firstly, let's see where the train lines are in Chicago. Okay. Now let's look for a house in Chicago. So I happen to have a bit of money, so I'm going to look for a house with a doorman. It's loading. Okay. Perhaps it's not loading. Well, we better fix this. And also, should I have found real estate, I can also look up crime in the Chicago area. So let's look up where burglaries are, because I have a lot of nice paintings that I don't want anyone stealing. And lots of burglaries all over the map. So let's try it one more time. It's not going to work, but no. Okay. So notice that we now have crime information on the map, and I can see that somebody did a home invasion at this location. So I really don't want to live in that area. So let's say I found a house in this area. Then I can now look for schools. And there's lots of schools in the area. So perhaps this one. And yes, so let's also see if, oops, wrong button. And now we can also look nearby for a cafe near the school, because when my children are at school, I'm going to go and drink coffee. So now that we have found a part of Chicago to live in, we have some cafes, we have schools. Let's show another example of something useful to do. I use the distance measurement tool. So I can use this tool to measure distances. And this is one of the very simple Mapplets that we wrote just to demonstrate the power of Mapplets. And I can click on the map and measure a path that I might want to run every day. So let's put on satellite mode. So have a look at the photographic images. And perhaps I want to do a jog in this area. and maybe 2.5 kilometers is a good distance, and maybe I'll then stop at the beach. So you'll see here that we've got a lot of information being overlaid onto the map. And we like to think of this, you've all probably heard the word mashup. So we like to think that this is now a mashup of mashups. So we've now got the information for transit, for burglaries, for a jogging route, for cafes. And so we now are mashing up the mashups, and we want to bring as much information to the user as we can. So another example, perhaps I want to see a movie in the area. So let's see when Pirates of the Caribbean is showing in Chicago. There we go, the blue markers. And inside Google Maps, I can now see all this information. Now I see that Pirates of the Caribbean is showing at these times. And one final example I want to add also is, some of you may have attended a talk on KML today. And the Mapplets tab, since it is for developers, can also show KML files. And we do have plans. Notice that this is a preview for just the developers. But in the future, when we open this up to the public, we will be able to, the public will be able to display all of their favorite Mapplets and KML files all in the one place. So I'm adding a KML file. So you can just type the address of the file into the browser. And for those who don't know, KML is a format for storing geographic information. And we highly recommend you use this format for storing your data. So in the developer preview, notice that we have a link here. And this link brings this file into my Mapplets tab. And if I zoom out far enough so I can see Japan and America, you can see the information all displays at the same time. Okay, let's continue. So now that I've shown you Mapplets, what actually are Mapplets? So Mapplets are created from a mashup of APIs. So hands up if you attended a talk today on Google Gadgets. Okay? So Mapplets are actually gadgets. And so Mapplets use the Google Gadgets API. And so a Maplet is an iframe that can contain any HTML or JavaScript. It gives you access to remote data, and we also provide you with storage of your user preferences. And on the other side, how many of you attended a talk today on the Google Maps API? Show of hands? Thank you. So Mapplets are Google Gadgets meets Google Maps. So the Mapplets use the Google Maps API, and they allow you to control the map. So you can add overlays to the map, and you can listen to events such as user clicks on the map. So now that you know what Mapplets are, let me show you what a Maplet actually looks like. So this is a rather simple Maplet, the hello world of Mapplets. So let's have a look at this code in detail. So over here in the gray section, this is the basic part that is required to make a Google gadget. So you'll see that it is an XML file, and it consists of a module tag and a module prefs tag. Now, to make this gadget a Maplet, you add one line of XML, require feature equals shared map. And this turns your gadget into a maplet and tells the maps program that this can communicate with the map. Then the actual interesting part, the content of the maplet itself, which is displayed in green here. So firstly, there is HTML, which says hello world. This content is displayed in the side panel. And we have a script tag, and this is where you put your JavaScript, which will actually run the program. So one can create a reference to the map, create a point at a given location, set the center, and then we add the marker to the map. And finally, we open an info window which says hello world. So I'm going to prove to you that this actually works. And the way I'm going to do that is by using a very cool tool called the Scratchpad. So back to the demo. So if you visit the gallery, for developers, you will notice a tab on the side which says Developer Tools. And there are a few useful tools here for developing Mapplets. And the one I'm going to show you now is the Maplet Scratchpad. So the Maplet Scratchpad actually allows you to paste source code into this Scratchpad, which is itself a maplet, and then run it on the map. So let's do it. Okay. Okay, so here's the Scratchpad. One other thing I'd like to point out is I mentioned user preferences for Mapplets. So I can, in fact, for my maplet, associate user preferences, such as for the Scratchpad, title, height, and font size. So I'll make this a small Scratchpad. Now it's smaller. And okay, now I'm going to copy the content from this maplet right into the Scratchpad. And I'll change it ever so slightly. Okay. And then I click this button here, preview. And the code that I just pasted into the Scratchpad loads. So I can very quickly prototype and develop a maplet using this tool without having to host any content on my own web page. Okay. So what is the system for Mapplets? What is the architecture? So broadly speaking, a user visits Google Maps and they communicate with our site. And then to request a maplet, we actually host your maplets from a different domain called gmodules.com. Now, what this domain does is it acts as a caching proxy so that you don't need to worry about buying expensive equipment to host your maplet. So we host your maplet for you, and we worry about uptime and bandwidth. So basically, this allows you to take advantage of Google's sophisticated serving architecture. And then behind your maplet can communicate directly with your server. So in the example of the booking maplet, this fetched information on hotels. And also, we provide you with a way of storing user preferences. So now for a bit of detail on how a maplet communicates with Google Maps. So the reason your Maplet runs on gmodules.com is because we need the Maplet and Google Maps to be on separate domains. This means that a Maplet cannot, in fact, look at a user's Google cookies. And if we had allowed that, then someone would be able to access a user's Gmail account, for example. So we're very careful about that. So when you make a function call from your Maplet, the function call is serialized and then packetized. Once we have done that with the function call, the Maplet creates an iframe in the maps.google.com domain. And this iframe, in the URL, it includes the packet in the hash fragment of its URL. So everything after the hash is the data that is the function call. When this iframe loads, it extracts the packet from the hash fragment and it forwards it to the map. So one thing to pay attention to here is that all the communication is in fact in the browser. So there are no server round trips, which makes the operation quite fast. So the Maplet, the reason we need this communication, the Maplet needs to control content on maps.google.com, and also we need to send information back so that the Maplet can listen to events. So could I please see a show of hands of who has developed using the Google Maps API? A few hands? Okay. Well, part of the reason I am here is I want to see the entire room have their hands up next time I visit Japan. So for those of you who are familiar with the Maps API, I'm going to now talk about some of the key differences. So one difference is that there are now certain functions have asynchronous calls. So all API calls that obtain a return value from the map will complete asynchronously. So a function call such as setCenter will still operate as normal, but a function such as getCenter, we are waiting for the result from this function call through the communication which I just described. So we need to make it asynchronous. So in the Google Maps API, one might write code like this. But in Mapplets, one writes code like this. So getZoom async. And one provides this function call with a function which is provided the result of the getZoom. And so that nobody gets confused, we've added the word async onto the names of all affected methods. Some other differences. Mapplets cannot change the standard behavior of Google Maps. So a Maplet can't disable dragging of the map. So in Maps API, we give you complete control, but since we're now allowing you onto our page, we let you do as much as we can without interfering with the basic user experience. So additionally, third-party JavaScript cannot run within the Google Maps page. So custom controls and map types are not currently supported. We filter the contents of info windows to remove all JavaScript and certain CSS properties. And if you really want to put your own content inside the info window, you can use an iframe within the info window, and that can contain your own content. Okay, now for an example of something you shouldn't do. So today, many Google Maps API pages do one thing and one thing only, and that is display points on a map. So a lot of Google Maps mashups add markers to the map using JavaScript. So in this code example, the developer has created an array of points. So here's Odaiba, and we have Stanford University and the Googleplex. And in the JavaScript code, the developer loops through this array and creates a marker for each location, adds it to the map, and then if a user should click on this marker, an info window opens with the name of the map. That's a lot of code just to display data on a map. So the correct way to do this is to use data files for your data. So instead, store your data in KML or GeoRSS. So some of you may have attended a talk earlier today on KML. So KML is a rich format for describing geographic data that can be read by Google Maps and Google Earth. So one can create a KML file inside Google Earth. And GeoRSS is an extension to embed geographic coordinates in RSS feeds. So one reason that you should do this, use data files rather than use code, is that Google now indexes all the KML and GeoRSS files on the web and returns them as search results. So if you have a data file with coordinates and you publish it on the web, people will be able to find it, people will be able to add it to their Mapplets tab, and it's much simpler. And here is an example of what a KML file looks like. So notice again, this is an XML file, and instead of using code, which may have bugs in it, rather we just list place marks with locations. So I encourage all of you who wish to display locations on a map, and that is all you wish to do, to rather use a KML file. And if you want to access this from your Maplet, 2 lines of code. So in order to display KML or GeoRSS from within a Maplet, you simply write this line of code, and this loads a KML file, and then you add the KML file as an overlay to the map. So please do this way. Now, something very important to our Japanese developers is that we would like your Mapplets to work in Japanese and also in English and other languages. There are many people around the world who may want to use your Maplet, so we support translations. So Mapplets, being built on top of Google Gadgets, uses the Google Gadgets translation system. And so from a single Maplet, you can support multiple languages. So you may remember oops, didn't press a button. You may notice I showed you the distance measurer earlier, and it was in Japanese text. The exact same Maplet also operates in English and also operates in feet instead of meters, should you want. And just to show you how we did this, it's very simple. This is actually the source code for the distance measurement tool. And yes, that's me. So in order to get language translations, you add lines that look like this. So locale messages equals and the file. So this is the file, an XML file, which displays the messages for the English and international version until we have more translations. And because I wanted to impress you all, I made sure that we had a Japanese version of this. So if you have lang equals JA, then, so if I am visiting maps.google.co.jp, then it will load this version of the messages. And just to show you what that actually looks like, simple. So these are the messages for the distance measurement tool. And there is a similar file for the English version. So, where do Mapplets fit into the big picture? So, just recently, Google Maps launched a feature called My Maps, which is a drag and drop editor. So you should use this when you just want to create a small map with only static data, such as here is a restaurant, here is a bar which we can go to after the restaurant, and a cinema, and you send this to your friends. Now, perhaps you want to display a lot of information, many points around the world. So rather use KML, which is for more experienced people. And this should be used if you're creating a large map or including dynamic data. And finally, if you really need power and you want a lot of control, use Mapplets. So Mapplets provide you with an interactive user interface and allow you to work with the map. So I'm really looking forward to all the exciting Mapplets that people will write, hopefully many in this room. I can't wait till somebody writes a game, maybe a flight simulator, or maybe walking around like Super Mario. And Mapplets will be nothing if it is not for the developers. So none of this would be possible without the people in this room. So I would like to thank you for all the development you've done so far, and I look forward to the development that you will do in the future. And I really hope that you all make cool Mapplets that are useful for Japan, such as great shops in Tokyo and good food. I've seen a lot already. And I recommend that you get in early while the Mapplets gallery is still empty, because that way your content will display on the front page and everyone will see your Maplet. So this is the URL you need to learn. So maps.google.co.jp/preview. And there is documentation at this address. So this link here. And hopefully we get Japanese documentation for this. But for now it is in English. And this tells you everything you need to know to make a Maplet. Gives you code examples, tutorials, and how to submit your Maplet to the directory. And I'll even show you what the submit page looks like. So at this page, we provide the URL of our Maplet, and we provide it with a title, description, and other information, and we upload our Maplet. So that's Mapplets. Thank you very much for having me here, and I look forward to talking with you after the presentation. So I believe we are now going to do questions and answers. So, does anyone have any questions about Mapplets?
Thank you for your presentation today. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you very much. Regarding Mapplets, you mentioned about Google Gears today, but will Google Gears be effective, be usable with Mapplets also?
So, at the moment, Mapplets and Google Gears are two different products. Google is always looking to find ways to integrate all of our products together. So if we find it useful to combine Google Gears with Google Mapplets, then we'll do it. Thank you.
すいません、今日はどうもありがとうございました。先ほどのマップレットの説明のところで、例えば自分が作成したマップレットは Google さんの方でホスティングしてくれるという話だったんですけども、例えば自分の作ったマップレットが自分のサーバーと通信をしていた場合ですね、JavaScript で例えば AJAX とかで通信をしていた場合にcommunicating with Ajax, and if the Google hosts it, then the domain will be changed and therefore won't be able to do the communication. How can I deal with that issue?
So the way to deal with that issue is if you need to communicate with your own data, there are two answers to this. One is host it from your own domain. So you can put the Mapplet XML file on your own domain, and then you can retrieve your own data. The alternative is that there are actually functions in the Gadgets API which allow you to request data from third-party sites. So this solves the security issue.
わかりました。どうもありがとうございます。
Thank you very much.
Any further questions?
.この機能をですね、有料サイト、要は企業向けにですね、
Can this function be used in corporate? Do you have any plans to provide this functionality for paid sites, sites that require a fee? Did you follow the question?
Yes. So, for paid sites, so there are many commercial applications to Mapplets. We allow, as you noticed, a hotel site to display on Mapplets, on Google Maps. So, the main purpose of Mapplets is bringing your Mapplet to Google Maps, and so you have the audience of everyone who uses Google Maps. Many of the Mapplets that we currently have in the gallery were created by other companies, such as Weatherbug and also Booking.com. And this booking, for example, allows you to get a hotel using their site. So we actually encourage this. And I hope that people can use Mapplets to buy houses, book hotel rooms, do all sorts of useful commercial activities, maybe buy movie tickets. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, thank you.
No further questions?
Thank you very much.
本日はありがとうございました。
Thank you
大
very
変
much.
面白い機能だと思い
Very
ます。
interesting functions.
それで質問なんですが、
And I have a
先ほど
question.
マーカーを表示する場合に
In order to display markers,
KML などを使って
using
表示した方が良いという
better
話を
to display the
おっしゃり
markers
ま
with
したが、
KML.
今までの Google
You
Maps
said, and the
API の
conventional
よう
Google
に
Maps API,
アドオバレイ
add
を使っ
overlay,
たようなマーカーの追加の仕方というのはでき
adding
なくなった
markers
ということ
with
なん
add
でしょうか。
overlay is no longer allowed. Is that right?
So we still allow adding markers using add overlay. Both Maps API and Mapplets API allow this functionality still. The reason we suggest you use KML files rather is it's simpler code. It separates the data from the program and also allows you to search for your data. But we still support those functions in both Maps and Mapplets API. Another question?
ありがとうございました。
Any more questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me here today. It was a pleasure talking to you, and good day.